Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this one we're going to be looking at Urbex photography. So it's a popular genre, it stands for urban exploration, and it's basically any environment in an urban setting. It's often abandoned places or showing urban decay, that kind of thing. So this is the image we're going to be editing. This is the final image, and I'm going to show you the process I've gone through to get there. So here we are in Lightroom. This is the original image. You'll see it's quite a bit darker than the final one, so we're going to have to play around with the exposure a bit to bring that up. First of all though, I'm going to crop the image. So we go up to the crop tool here, and I want to get rid of these window areas on the left hand side. I could bring the exposure up and locally just on those window areas and bring back some of the detail on the outside of the building, but to be honest I don't think they're necessary, so I'm just going to come right down to about there and just get rid of them completely. And I think I'm just going to bring that bottom bit up, and what I'm doing there is I'm doing it by eye, but I'm also using the lines, the grid lines there, the rule of third lines. So my top horizontal line is kind of just on top of the seat of the cart there, and the bottom line and the bottom horizontal line is just above the front wheel there. And there's no right or wrong with this. It's, you know, the rule of thirds is useful, but it's by no means, you know, definitive. Use your judgment, look at it, look how it looks with your eye. What I generally do is I'll look if there's any kind of patterns or things that fall on those rule of third lines, and if it looks good I'll use them, but if not then I won't. So yeah, always use your judgment. So we'll close that. That's my crop. Now as I've mentioned in previous videos, I always like to start with the auto settings in tone. So I'll come over here next to tone, click auto, and that immediately just brightens up the image. Looks a lot nicer now. And I'm just going to go through some of these other tone settings now, just to tweak the exposure, because the auto settings are good, but it's always best just to tweak it and get it exactly how you want it. So the highlights, I'm bringing those up a little bit. Shadows, I'm going to bring those up because I know that I'm going to use the dehaze slider in a little while, and the dehaze slider adds a bit of contrast and saturation, so we'll need to compensate by bringing the shadows up, because the dehaze will add a bit of darkness and more richness and saturation to the blacks. So whites, we'll bring those up as well, not too much, and I'm going to lower the blacks a bit, just because I want a kind of quite a dark feel. It's got a slightly ominous feel, hasn't it, the whole abandoned area, so I want it to look a little bit dark, and bringing the blacks down will help me achieve that. So next I'm just going to come down and play around with the saturation sliders. I'm going to pump up the yellow a little bit, because that's quite a prominent colour on the cart there. I want that to really stand out. And I'm also going to reduce the blues a bit, because there's that bit of blue in the background there with the graffiti, and I think it's just a bit strong, that blue, so I'm going to bring down the saturation just a little bit on that. And I could play around with the hue a little bit, if I wanted slightly different colours, maybe green for the cart, but I don't think it's necessary. I quite like the yellow. And luminance, I could try and brighten that yellow, but again I don't think it's necessary. I'm just going to change the saturation on this occasion. So next I'll go up to presence, and I'll tweak the dehaze clarity and texture sliders. So as I said before, dehaze, that adds contrast and saturation. So reducing it is going to look horrible for a start, but it's going to reduce the saturation and the contrast, so you get this really kind of wishy-washy, hazy look, and pumping it up gives you this really bold, saturated, dark look. That's obviously way too much. I'm just going to do it a little bit, so round about there. Now clarity, I am going to bump that up. This is kind of like sharpening on a large scale. So it looks for large areas and kind of, it's like sharpening, but not fine edge sharpening. It's like it's sharpening for larger areas. And because this is quite a gritty image, I want it to be kind of sharp and gritty, and so I want quite a bit of clarity in it. And the same with texture. So texture is again like sharpening, but it's on a more refined scale than clarity, so it's going to affect more of the edges and finer detail. So I'll bring that up a little bit. Okay. Now the actual sharpening, because we've done some work with the clarity and texture, I don't think I'm going to be changing that. It's on 40 by default, and I don't think we need to tweak that any further. Same with luminance, same with noise reduction. So if I just zoom in on this, if we go very close, we can see a little bit of noise, but it's not too bad, to be honest. I could bring the luminance slider up in noise reduction just to reduce that noise, but to be honest, I like the gritty look anyway, so I'm going to leave it on this occasion. I think it's looking okay. And I'm going to bring it into Photoshop now. So you can hit Command and E, or if you're using a PC, Control and E on your keyboard. And there it'll open up in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I don't like these kind of areas in the roof that are quite bright and distracting. So I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, which is over here on the left. And I'll use, you've got on your keyboard square brackets. They're next to the return key. So you've got a left square bracket and a right square bracket. The right one will make your brush size bigger, the left one will make it smaller. And I'm just going to zoom in on that area. I'm going to hold Option on my keyboard, or Alt if you're using PC. And I'm going to choose an area here by holding Option or Alt, clicking, and then wherever I start brushing, it'll copy that area. So I might copy this area up top actually, it might look a bit better. So maybe like something like that. So you can take a bit more time on this. From a distance, that looks okay to me. And there's another one just here. And another way to do this actually is if you use the patch tool, which is here on the left. You can draw around those areas and then just drag them over and let go, and it'll kind of clone them in. Might do that one there. And maybe that one there. Don't need to do them all, it was just, I found some of them a bit distracting, so it would be nice to get rid of them. And on this left hand side, I've just got a little bit of something poking in there, which I'm going to get rid of. I don't like things coming in from the edge of the image. So again, I'm just using the patch tool to get rid of those. Minor things, but it's the little details that really add up to make an image good or not. And that's more or less okay, I think. What I'm going to do now is just go to the adjustments panel here, and I'm going to choose levels, which will add a new adjustment layer here, and I can just play around with the levels just to brighten this up a bit. I'm going to bring up this slider here. So basically what this does is the right hand side slider will bring up the highlights, the left hand slider will bring up the shadows, and then you've got one in the middle for the kind of mid-tones. I'm going to leave the shadows and mid-tones, but I'm going to bring up the highlights a bit to around about there, I think. So it just really just adds a bit of pop to it, just a bit of brightness. But like I said before, I want this image to be quite dark, to give you that ominous, abandoned feeling. But at the same time, I do want the brightness to make it look nice and pop. So what I'm going to do is just kind of create a vignette so that it'll mask out part of the levels adjustment layer, and then just be bright in the middle where the focus is and not around the edges. So I'm going to just draw out I'm going to use my marquee tool, the elliptical one, and just draw out a circle or more like an oval shape. So I'm going to draw my oval out to about there. Let go. I'm going to go to select, modify, feather, and I'm going to choose, it's already on 250 there, that's what I want, so it's quite a large feather. So what that means is it's not going to have it's not going to have a hard edge, it's going to have quite a feathered soft edge. And I'm on my mask area down here on the adjustment layer, and I'm just going to select the paint bucket tool, and I'm going to fill in with black. Sorry, I'm going to invert the selection first. So you can go to select, inverse, and then just fill in that area with black. And you'll see down here what that's done is put black onto the mask layer, and wherever it's black, it's going to mask out whatever that layer was doing, and it was adjusting the levels. So if I just turn that on and off, you'll see it just brightens up the middle now. And that's it. So if I hit save, then go back to Lightroom, we've got the image in there, and from here we can export it as a final image. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was useful. Just a bit of standard Lightroom and Photoshop editing really for an Urbex image. And like I said, I really do like this kind of image, this genre of Urbex, urban exploration. I really like giving it that kind of gritty look, and so playing around with clarity, texture, sharpening. You don't have to do too much to give it a really kind of dark, gritty look. And you could play around with this further if you wanted. You could try darker vignettes. You could try bringing your shadows or blacks down, playing around with split toning, just to really give it a really dark and gritty look. But I like what I've done with this image. So yeah, hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click the button down here. And as always, thank you and bye for now.